Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the insurance industry. Have you ever really thought about what happens after you sign an application? Well, it's not some robot or a machine. It's actually a really fascinating process run by some key people, and we're about to meet them.
You know that moment, right? You fill out all the paperwork, you sign on the dotted line, and then poof, it disappears. But where does it go? Well, it doesn't just vanish into some black box. It's a very human process, handled by a team of specialists, and every single one of them has a critical role to play.
So, we're going to meet the three main characters in the story of your insurance application. And trust me, understanding their roles is the key to unlocking how this whole system actually works. Here they are, the producer, the applicant, and the underwriter. Think of these three as a team. They're in this constant dance of information that ultimately leads to a final policy. And figuring out how their jobs are different, yet totally connected, is absolutely crucial.
All right, first up is the producer. I like to think of them as the field scout. They're out there on the front lines, they're probably your first point of contact, and they're the one who kicks this entire journey off.
Now, a producer isn't just a salesperson. Nope, they're actually the first line of defense in the whole underwriting game. They do something called field underwriting, which is basically them making an initial call on whether an applicant is a good fit. This is a huge deal because it saves the company so much time and money by filtering out applications that just aren't going to work from the get-go. And their job, oh, it's incredibly detailed. There are basically 5 essential tasks they have to nail, from how they approach a potential client to making sure every single blank on that application is filled out, getting the signatures, collecting that first payment, and issuing the right receipt. Each one of these steps is a critical building block. If they mess up just one, the whole thing could be in jeopardy. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. Producers have what's called a fiduciary responsibility. It's kind of a fancy term, but all it means is they have a legal and ethical duty to act in the best interest of other people. So they have to do this delicate balancing act between the needs of the insurance company they work for and your needs as the client. It's a really high professional standard. But look, they're human, right? What happens if they accidentally jot down the wrong piece of info or just forget a small detail? Well, the system has a safety net built in for exactly that. That safety net is called errors and omissions insurance, or just E&O. So a tort is just a legal term for a civil wrong that causes someone a loss. If a producer makes an unintentional error, a tort, that causes a problem down the line, their E&O insurance can cover that negligence. It's there to protect both the producer and, ultimately, you. Now, let's shift gears to the absolute star of the show, the person this is all about, the applicant. They are the protagonist of this story, and all the information they provide is what drives the entire process forward. Okay, the terminology here can get a little tricky, so let's break it down. You have the applicant, that's the person asking for the insurance. You have the insured, that's the person who's actually being covered. And you have the policyholder, who owns the policy. A lot of the time, one person is all three. But think about this. A parent might buy a life insurance policy for their adult child. In that case, the parent is the applicant and the policyholder, but the child is the insured. See the difference? So if the producer's main job is accuracy, the applicant has one huge responsibility: being truthful. I mean, this is completely non-negotiable. The entire policy is built on the information they give. Any false statements can actually void the coverage completely. You know, in insurance, honesty isn't just the best policy, it's the only way to even get a policy. And finally, it's time to meet the person behind the curtain, the ultimate decision maker. Let's call them the risk detective. They're the one who takes all the clues from the producer and the applicant and, well, solves the case. So who is this person? The underwriter works for the insurance carrier, and their job is all about analysis. They're the ones who comb through the application, look at medical records, check other reports, and ultimately classify the level of risk that an applicant brings to the table. You can really boil down their entire job to 3 core functions. First, they select the risks the company wants to take on. Then, they classify those risks into different categories, like preferred, standard, or maybe substandard. And finally, they rate the risk, which is what determines the final price or the premium of the policy. So why do they do all this? What's the big ultimate goal here? It all comes down to one thing: protecting the company from something called adverse selection. That's just the natural tendency for people who are at a higher risk to be the ones most likely to go looking for insurance. So the underwriter's job is to balance the scales and make sure the company isn't only insuring the highest risk people out there, So we've met our three players, right? The scout, the protagonist, and the detective. Now let's put it all together and see how this team actually works in a single, smooth process. It all kicks off out in the field. The producer meets with the applicant, gathers all the necessary details, makes sure that application is 100% complete, and then sends that file on its way to the home office. They are the starting pistol.
And right in the middle of everything, you've got the applicant. Their honest and complete information is the raw material for this entire process. You could say the quality of the final decision really depends on the quality of their input.
And then, finally, that file lands on the underwriter's desk. This is the moment of truth. They analyze every piece of information from the producer and the applicant, they weigh all the risks, and they make that final call. Approve, deny, or maybe approve with a few changes. They are the finish line.
So when you really think about it, it's so much more than just a piece of paper, isn't it? It's the end result of a detailed process, a real collaboration between a scout, a protagonist, and a detective, all working together to create a binding promise. So my question to you is, now that you know who's who, how does that change the way you see an insurance policy? Thanks for tuning in.